Parents abandoned me and my young siblings when I was 21 so they could start over and find themselves. Then after I raised them years, they came back demanding custody and sued me claiming I wrongfully assumed guardianship. When I was 21, everything in my life completely changed, and not in the way I ever imagined. I had just wrapped up my associate degree and was working part-time while figuring out my next steps. I didn't have big, elaborate dreams. I just wanted a stable job, maybe go back to school part-time, and, eventually, save enough to move out of the tiny apartment I shared with a friend. I thought I had time to figure it all out. Then came a phone call that turned everything upside down in a way I never saw coming. It was my parents. Now, let me say this up front, I always thought of them as a little unconventional but still decent people at heart. They weren't the warm and fuzzy type, but they were my parents, and I trusted them, at the very least, be responsible for their kids. That trust shattered during that call. They told me they had decided to move to another state. Not for work or family reasons, no. They wanted to start over, find themselves, or whatever midlife crisis jargon they were throwing around. The kicker? They weren't planning to take my younger siblings with them. I have 3 siblings. Jacob was 10 at the time, a sweet but sensitive kid who looked up to our parents more than anyone in the world. Then there were the twins, Joy and Ethan, who were only 6. My parents wanted to be free to live their own lives, date new people, and do whatever they felt like, without any strings attached. And somehow, in their minds, the logical solution was for me to take over. After all, I was an adult now, wasn't I? According to them, I could step up and take care of my siblings. At first, I honestly thought it was a joke. A bad, twisted joke. I remember laughing nervously, waiting for them to say, "Just kidding." But the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. They were dead serious. Within weeks, they packed up and left. Just like that. They handed me temporary guardianship papers, barely explained what they meant, along with a small savings account they claimed was for the kids, and walked out of our lives. No plans for visits, no promises to check in, nothing. It felt like they had just erased themselves from the equation without a second thought. I was overwhelmed and terrified. I didn't know the first thing about raising kids, let alone 3 of them. I tried to fight it. I called social services, hoping they'd step in. I explained everything. I was barely making ends meet. I was too young. I didn't have the resources. I thought they'd understand. But when they found out I was family and technically willing to try, their tone shifted. They explained that the system prioritizes keeping kids with family whenever possible. They offered some resources, checked that my apartment was safe enough for the kids, and left me to it. Basically, I was stuck. I'll be honest, those first few years were hell. I went from barely taking care of myself to being a full-time parent to 3 kids. I worked multiple jobs, barely slept, and felt like I was failing constantly. The nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake worrying about money, how I was going to juggle everything, and whether I was even doing the right thing by trying to keep us together. Jacob acted out a lot in the beginning. He was angry at the world and at me, though I knew it wasn't really my fault. The twins were just confused. They'd cry at bedtime, asking why mom and dad didn't want them anymore, and I had no answers that wouldn't break their little hearts even more. The savings account my parents left behind didn't last long. It ran out within a year. By then, I had learned just how expensive it was to raise 3 kids. I remember one week in particular when everything seemed to go wrong. The car broke down, leaving me scrambling to figure out how to get the kids to school and myself to work. On top of that, the fridge was nearly empty, and I had no idea how I was going to afford groceries. Desperate, I ended up pawning a few things I swore I'd never part with just to get through the week. It was humbling, frustrating, and a little soul-crushing, but I didn't have any other choice. To make ends meet, I started picking up whatever side gigs I could find. Cleaning houses, babysitting, running errands for neighbors. I said yes to anything that brought in a little extra cash. At one point, I was juggling 3 different jobs on top of taking care of the kids. I barely slept, maybe 4 hours a night if I was lucky. My days were an endless loop of work, errands, cooking, cleaning, and parenting. There were times I felt like I was drowning, but somehow, I managed to keep going. Slowly but surely, we started to find our footing. The kids began to adjust to the new normal. Jacob, who had been so angry and withdrawn at first, started to settle down. By the time he hit middle school, he was excelling academically and even joined the soccer team. Seeing him out on the field, running with so much focus and determination, made me so proud I could hardly stand it. The twins, Joy and Ethan, grew into curious, lively little kids. They loved to draw, tell silly jokes, and play pretend for hours. Joy insisted she'd be an artist one day, while Ethan switched between wanting to be a firefighter, a scientist, or a superhero, depending on the day. Their energy and imagination were contagious, even when I was completely exhausted. As we found some stability, I tried to give them as much of a normal childhood as I could. I made a point to show up for everything that mattered to them. I went to Jacob's soccer games, cheered loudly at the twin school plays, and stayed up late helping with homework when they needed it. Birthdays were always a big deal, even when money was tight. I'd get creative homemade cakes, second-hand toys, or fun outings to the park, and seeing their smiles made it all worth it. We had our fair share of challenges, but we also had plenty of moments where we laughed until our sides hurt or stayed up late talking about random things. It wasn't easy, though. I had to grow up faster than anyone should have too. But in some ways, so did the kids. We became a team, leaning on each other when things got tough. They kept me going on the days when I felt like giving up, and I like to think I gave them a sense of stability in a world that had completely flipped upside down. At the same time, I carried a lot of anger. I loved my siblings with all my heart, but I couldn't ignore the deep resentment I felt toward my parents. They had dumped their responsibilities on me, their own child, without a second thought. I paid the price for their selfishness in ways they would never understand. My 20s disappeared in a blur of school drop-offs, PTA meetings, scraped knees, and sleepless nights. College, which once felt like a realistic goal, became a pipe dream. Friendships drifted away because I couldn't keep up with the carefree lives of people my age. While my peers were partying, traveling, and building careers, I was trying to figure out how to make a dollar stretch far enough to cover lunch money and electricity bills. By the time Jacob was in college and the twins were finishing high school, I was burned out. But I was also proud. We had made it. The kids were turning into decent humans despite everything, and I was starting to think about what life could look like for me once they were fully independent. I even started toying with the idea of going back to school or finally taking a trip somewhere. It felt like I could finally breathe again. After completely ditching us for 10 years, they just showed up like nothing had changed. Apparently, they'd found new partners and decided to get remarried to each other. Yeah, you read that right. After all this time, their big journey of self-discovery led them right back to each other. When they first appeared, I thought maybe they were trying to make things right, but I couldn't have been more wrong. They didn't want to apologize or fix things, they wanted to reclaim their family, like they were just picking up where they left off. They had this idea that everything would magically go back to normal. What they meant by family wasn't about us being close or repairing anything, it was about showing off a perfect picture of a happy, nuclear family with their new partners, like we were some sort of accessory to their shiny new life. When I didn't just roll over and welcome them back, things got ugly real quick. And then, just 2 days ago, I got hit with a shocker. They're suing me. Seriously. They want legal custody of the kids' 16-year-old twins and Jacob, who's 20 now. They actually filed a lawsuit, claiming I'd wrongfully assumed custody and that they wanted their parental rights reinstated because they're getting remarried. They say they're trying to put the family back together, like I hadn't spent the last 10 years trying to keep things together on my own. I was furious. I'd spent 10 years cleaning up the mess they left behind. I gave up my dreams, my freedom, and so much more to take care of the kids they abandoned. Now they wanted to waltz back into our lives as if nothing had happened? As if I hadn't been the one who raised 3 kids on my own at the age of 21? I couldn't understand how they even thought they had a leg to stand on legally. But apparently, they'd hired a decent lawyer who was spinning this narrative that I had essentially kidnapped the kids. They claimed they'd never agreed to permanently relinquish their rights and that they were only taking a break when they left. The kids, now young adults, want nothing to do with them. Jacob has been vocal about how much he resents them for what they did, and the twins remember enough to know they weren't abandoned out of love. But the lawsuit is real, and I'm terrified. I don't have the money for a drawn-out legal battle. My siblings are on my side, but this isn't just about what's right, it's about what I can afford to fight. In the meantime, my parents have been trying to stir the pot. They've contacted extended family members, spinning their version of the story where I'm the villain who kept their kids away from them. A few relatives have reached out to me, urging me to just forgive and forget or let the kids decide. It's infuriating. Where were these people when I was struggling to make rent? Where were they when I had to choose between paying for gas or buying school supplies? Because I feel like I'm drowning. The idea that the people who abandoned us could come back and legally disrupt our lives after everything we've been through is infuriating. I don't even know where to begin or how to handle this. How do you protect the family you built from the people who tried to tear it apart? What should I do? Update 1. It's been a couple of days since I first shared what's been happening, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. First off, thank you to everyone who took the time to comment, offer advice, and show support. I'm honestly overwhelmed by how kind strangers can be. A lot of people suggested that I get a lawyer right away, even if it means taking out loans or starting a fundraiser. I've started looking into family law attorneys who know how to handle cases like this. I'm also contacting legal aid organizations to see if they can help me. It's clear that this isn't going to be cheap, but I don't really have a choice. Jacob and the twins are angry about the lawsuit. They've all said they'll speak to a lawyer or testify if they have to. It means a lot to know they're on my side, but it's hard to watch them go through this again. It's bringing up all the pain my parents caused. Jacob is especially upset. He's been vocal about his anger, but I can see how much it's weighing on him. The twins are handling it differently. Joy has been really quiet, which isn't like her, and Ethan has been burying himself in his schoolwork. I think they're all trying to cope in their own ways, but it's clear this is affecting them deeply. I've started gathering all the proof I can find. It feels like a never-ending task, but I have to do it. I've dug up old emails and text messages from my parents, school records for the kids, and receipts for doctor's visits and all the other stuff I've paid for over the years. I'm trying to put everything in order, making a timeline from the moment they left to now. It's exhausting to go through it all, but I'm hoping it'll help me in the long run. I'm also keeping track of everything they've done recently. They've been posting all over social media, spreading this fake narrative about how they're just trying to reunite our family, and they're painting me as the bad guy who kept the kids away from them. It's beyond frustrating to see them twist the story like this. Some people who don't know the whole truth are actually believing it. Luckily, some friends and family who know what really happened have been calling them out, but it still stings to see those posts. What really gets to me is how some distant relatives have been reaching out, telling me I should just work things out with my parents. They're acting like I'm the one being unreasonable or stubborn. But where were they when I was doing everything on my own, struggling to raise the kids? It feels so unfair. Now that my parents are trying to come back into the picture, all these people suddenly care about family unity. One of them even had the nerve to say that the kids might have a better childhood if I just let my parents take over. That hit me like a punch in the gut. The kids don't even want to be near my parents, and for good reason. They remember the hurt and confusion from when they left us. The first court hearing is in 2 weeks, and the wait is killing me. I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I imagine facing my parents in court, my stomach turns. I'm terrified of what could happen. The thought of losing the kids, especially after everything we've been through, is too much to handle. They're not just my siblings anymore, they're my family. My parents gave up that role a long time ago. But the thing is, the legal system is so unpredictable, and that's what really scares me. I have no idea how this is going to play out. Also, something happened last night that made everything feel even worse. I got this letter from my parents the other day. It wasn't a formal court notice or anything. It was handwritten, which just made it feel even more personal. They wrote about how they've forgiven me for tearing the family apart and how they want us to heal together. They claim they've changed and are finally ready to be the parents we always needed. And, get this, they even said I could stay involved in the kids' lives if I just let go of the past. Honestly, reading it made my stomach turn. They're acting like this whole thing is just a big misunderstanding, as if they didn't just walk away and leave me to pick up the mess they made. Jacob saw the letter before I could hide it. He completely lost it, ripped it into a bunch of tiny pieces and stormed out of the house. When he came back, he told me he'd never forgive them for what they did to us. I don't blame him at all. I haven't shown the twins the letter yet. Part of me wants to protect them from it, but I'm also torn. Maybe they should know everything that's going on, but I'm worried it will just upset them even more. To make matters worse, a neighbor mentioned seeing a car parked outside our house that looked like my parents. They didn't come to the door or anything, but the thought of them possibly watching us just gave me the creeps. I've been checking all the locks every night, and I'm even looking into getting security cameras. I know it might sound paranoid, but I don't want to take any chances. I'm trying to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, even though everything feels so far from normal. We've been cooking dinners together, playing board games, anything to keep our minds off everything. But there's this constant, heavy tension in the air. Every time the phone rings or there's a knock at the door, my heart skips a beat. The stress is starting to get to all of us, and I'm honestly not sure how much more we can handle. I'm doing everything I can, but it never feels like enough. How do you fight something like this? How do you protect the people you love from the ones who should have been protecting them all along? If anyone has advice or has been through something similar, I'd really appreciate hearing from you. I'm trying to stay strong, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up. Update 2. A lot's happened since I last updated, and honestly, it's been a total roller coaster. The big news is that I've officially hired a lawyer, which is such a relief. I honestly couldn't have done it without my boyfriend, who stepped up and helped me cover the initial costs. The lawyer went over everything and told me that my parents' claims don't really have much weight. The fact that they abandoned us and that I've been the one taking care of the kids for almost a decade definitely works in our favor. But even though it feels like we've got a good case, the whole legal process is still incredibly stressful, and just the thought of facing them in court makes my stomach turn. Jacob and the twins have been absolutely amazing through all of this. They've each written statements about their experiences and how they feel about our parents. Reading what they had to say was both heartbreaking and powerful. They basically said I've been everything to them: mom, dad, sister, brother, everything rolled into one. It was a good reminder of why I've fought so hard for them all these years. Jacob's statement really got to me, though. He talked about how he used to wait by the window, hoping our parents would come back, and how he eventually had to accept they weren't going to. I'm so proud of how strong they've all become, but it's painful that they had to go through all of this in the first place. As for my parents, they haven't let up at all. I've been getting multiple voicemails from my mom, each one more dramatic than the last. She's crying about how she's always wanted to be a mother to the twins and Jacob, how much she misses them, and how she doesn't understand why I'm keeping them from her. It's honestly maddening to hear her twist the story like that. She's acting like I'm the one who pushed them away when it was them who abandoned us when things got hard. They've even tried reaching out directly to Jacob. My parents sent him several messages, basically trying to bribe him. They offered to help him with college expenses, buy him a car, and said they just wanted their family back together. Jacob showed me the messages, and it was obvious he was furious. He flat out told me he didn't want anything to do with them. I told him to delete the messages and block their numbers if he needed to. I'm really proud of how he's handling it all, but I know it's not easy for him. It's just a lot to deal with, especially with everything else going on. On a more positive note, some extended family members who had been distant over the years have reached out to show their support. Apparently, my parents' behavior is raising eyebrows across the board. One aunt told me she had no idea the extent of what my parents had done. She's offered to write a letter on our behalf, detailing how my parents essentially disappeared and left me to raise the kids on my own. Another cousin shared a story about how my mom once told her she was done with parenting and needed to live her life for herself. Knowing that other people see through their act makes me feel less alone. But it's not all smooth sailing. My parents have been ramping up their social media campaign, posting about how they're fighting to reunite their family and painting me as some kind of villain. They're spinning this narrative that I've kidnapped the kids and turned them against their real parents. It's absolutely maddening. A few mutual acquaintances have even messaged me, saying things like, maybe you should try to work things out for the sake of the kids. I'm trying not to let it get to me, but it's hard not to feel attacked. The court date is coming up fast, and I'm doing everything I can to prepare. My lawyer has been great about guiding me through the process, but it's still overwhelming. I keep going over everything in my head, wondering if there's something I've missed or could do better. I've also started a GoFundMe to help with the legal fees, and the response has been incredible. Friends, coworkers, and even some strangers have donated and shared words of encouragement. It's a reminder that there are good people in the world, even when things feel hopeless. I'm holding on to that hope as we move forward. I'm trying to stay strong for the kids, but there are moments when the fear and anger feel overwhelming. I'm doing my best, but some days it feels like it's not enough. If anyone has advice or has been through something similar, I'd love to hear from you. Knowing we're not alone in this fight makes all the difference. Update 3. The court hearing was today, and I can finally breathe a huge sigh of relief. It went in our favor. The judge completely dismissed my parents' lawsuit, pointing out that their abandonment and lack of involvement for the past 10 years made their claims totally unjustifiable. My lawyer did a great job explaining how their sudden desire to get custody wasn't about actually caring for the kids, but more about their own image. Thankfully, the judge agreed, calling their behavior over the years a clear pattern of neglect. Honestly, hearing that verdict felt like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders, but I have to admit, the whole process left me emotionally drained. After the ruling, we were walking out of the courtroom when my parents tried to approach us in the hallway. And then, something I never expected happened. Jacob stepped up and told them off in a way I didn't think he had it in him. He told them how they abandoned us during the hardest years of our lives, left all their responsibilities on my shoulders, and now, they were acting like they were the victims. And then, he said something that completely left them speechless. He told them that my boyfriend had been more of a father figure to him and the twins than they ever were. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned, but also so incredibly proud of him. Watching Jacob stand up for himself, for us, and say everything I've been holding in for years was such a powerful moment. They didn't argue or fight back, they just stood there in shock as we walked away. On the way to the car, Jacob told me that he'd never felt prouder of himself, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. The twins were quiet on the ride home, but they both held my hands really tightly like they needed to feel connected. I think we all did. For the first time in so long, I don't feel scared about what's coming next. This battle is finally over, and now, we can start looking ahead instead of always looking over our shoulders. It feels like we can finally move on. When we got home, we decided to sit down together and talk about what we wanted for the future. For so long, we've just been trying to get through the day-to-day chaos, but now, we can actually think about what we want. Jacob talked about getting more involved at college. He's looking into joining a mentorship program and maybe even applying for some leadership roles. The twins are doing so much better and are focused on their studies. As for me, I'm still figuring out what's next. I've been so focused on survival for the past 10 years that I never really let myself think about my own goals. Maybe I'll go back to school part-time, or look for a job that feels more meaningful. My boyfriend, who's been my absolute rock through all of this, suggested we plan a family trip next summer. He wants us to celebrate the end of this long, exhausting chapter with something fun and lighthearted. Just thinking about it feels strange. I'm not used to the idea of having space for joy, but I'm starting to believe it's something we're allowed to have. Not everything is perfect, of course. My parents are still posting on social media, trying to spin the court ruling as some kind of misunderstanding. They're playing the victims, saying all they ever wanted was to reconnect with their kids, and painting me as the person who kept us apart. A few distant relatives are still falling for it, sending me messages about how family is everything and how I should forgive and forget. But I've learned to tune it out. The people who really matter, my siblings, close friends, and supportive extended family, know the truth, and that's enough for me. One thing I did after the court hearing was sit down and organize all the documents, evidence, and notes we used for the case. I don't expect another legal battle, but being prepared gives me peace of mind. It's strange, looking through everything: emails, receipts, school records. It's like a painful reminder of just how much we've been through, but also proof of how strong we are. I can't change the past, but I'm determined to make sure our future is better. As I reflect on everything, I feel a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and optimism. I don't think my parents will ever truly understand the damage they've done, but I've realized it's not my job to make them understand. That's their burden, not mine. What matters now is focusing on the people who stayed, who cared, and who fought through this with me. I'm also overwhelmed with gratitude for the support we've received along the way. Friends, extended family, and even strangers online reached out to encourage us, share advice, or just remind us that we weren't alone. It's hard to put into words how much that meant, especially during the darkest moments when I felt like I was drowning. Knowing there were people out there rooting for us made all the difference. So now, we move forward. I'm excited, nervous, and maybe even a little scared, but mostly, I'm hopeful. For the first time in a long time, it feels like the future is ours to shape. To everyone who's followed our story, offered advice, or simply left kind words, thank you. You've been a part of this journey, and I'll never forget it. Here's to brighter days ahead for me, my siblings, and the little family we've built together.